Hi, it's Kat Smythe, and we are going to have a great conversation because Colin and I've already been talking a lot, but I first have to we respectfully acknowledge the enduring and active relationship of Indigenous people with this land, specifically the area in which we inhabit today, also known as the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7. The society as an organization is focused on well-being of the land. We endeavor to honor Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis rights and relationships with the land and the ability for all to grow, live, work, and play within this territory. So let us begin. So tonight my guest is Colin Hales from Golden Acre Garden Center. He's the hard goods buyer. And the thing that intrigues me about Colin is that he's the hard goods buyer. So he bought us a bit of hard goods, but he brought all these seeds and he brought all these flowers and he brought begonias. We're going to talk begonia tubers. It'll be exciting.
We're not just going to talk to them. We're going to rip these bags open and we're going to look at them. We're going to hold them and then I'm going to leave them behind for you. I know how to make friends real easy.
Oh, okay. So Colin started his adventures in the world of horticulture back in 1997, and he was working as a landscaper in Montreal, and he got his horticulture diploma from the University of Guelph through an applied sciences degree. Eventually, Colin made it to YYC, where he happened to end up working at Golden Acre Home and Garden. With over 20 years of experience all across Canada, he has developed a love of all things nature and gardening. And he is presently also doing co-hosting of the podcast, The Helpful Gardeners. If none of you have watched it or seen it or heard it, you should.
Yeah, it's definitely our passion project, and we just love doing it. And we finally built our little studio, and next week or the week after, we're going to be live on air too. So yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Oh, well, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
that will be fun. We do enjoy our little studio in the basement here, at the office. And
I already commented. I love it.
Isn't it a great little spot? I always, when I first saw it, I went, oh, I really like this. So it is one of those things. So what did you bring?
Well, you know, as per our conversation and what we know about this time of year, everybody's got that gardening itch, right? We're past Christmas, we're past January, and especially with the weather we're having, we're in that first false spring where we're already thinking about getting outside. So I thought we had to talk about seeds and seed starting.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I brought a couple of things, but you know, mainly what I wanted to talk about to get starting, and you know, we were talking about it, the three of us down here, right off the bat, is and I've done it. I've been guilty of it. I've done it. I make it sound like I've learned from my mistakes. I did it last year too, where the season gets to around this time, maybe a bit later, and I get the bug. And I get the itch and I start growing from seeds, and I take one of my trays, make a bit of ruckus with my insert like that, and I fill the whole thing with seeds. And then I have one of the big heat mats. So we have a heat mat here, but this is a double heat mat. So this heat mat does your standard tray, your 10 by 20.
Yes.
This is the 20 by 20.
Oh, I haven't got one that big.
Yeah, I love them. So I have one of those. Well, my brain tells me if I'm only using half of it, I'm wasting power. I'm wasting money. So I may as well do. Anyway, long story short, before I know it, I've got 144 seeds going.
I do things like that.
Yep.
But I never used to use heat mats. I used to use the back of my freezer because it was always so warm.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah, and it worked. It was great. But then I discovered heat mats, and I can't change.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. For the longest time, and I knew they had a purpose, but I was kind of the same. I was like, you don't need them. And finally somebody gave me one, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll use it. game changer, especially on tomatoes and peppers.
Yeah, I was just gonna say my tomatoes really do
Yeah,
very well if I get the roots.
and
right.
that's I noticed on those two specifically, it helps everything, but on those two specifically, it was a game changer. And I've never now I give heat mats as gifts to people,
Good
right?
plan.
Yeah, because
Yeah, it's what we want to see done and how
Yep.
we want to give great benefit to, I mean, as you probably know, doing your podcast, it's the education that the people take and the information and they walk away. But I laughed when you said tomatoes. Do you know how many peppers there are on the seed rack? This just cracks me up.
yep.
He said, I just brought you a few peppers.
Well, I was going to bring like one cauliflower and one tomato, and I was like, no, like let's showcase variety if we're
See,
going to do it.
See that? I look
Yep.
at this and I go, oh my goodness me. And there's some really hot ones in here. Oh
Yep.
boy. Carolina Reaper.
I grew Carolina Reaper last year.
And how was it? Did anyone in the family eat it?
Yeah, my wife was a smart one. She said no thanks. The 16-year-old boy and his friends, they were the first ones to try it.
Yeah.
And obviously I had to try it, and I still remember biting into it, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad. I can definitely feel the heat. And then the moment the saliva hit, I was like, oh, this is not pleasant. This is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and yet I have friends who love them. Ghost chili, that's a barn burner.
Yep.
That really is. But I thought, are there really that many peppers?
And that's
That's just one company.
yeah, exactly. That's one company, just their peppers. And yeah, a lot of people, we were kind of mentioning this when I talk to people and I ask, why do you want to grow from seed? Like, what's
Yes.
your end goal?
Yes.
I hear things, oh, well, I want to save money, negligible. I want a project with the kids. That's great. But like anything with kids, just remember that project is going to become your project. Like, I remember when we got a puppy, and my son was 10 years old, and he promised he would walk it every day. Anyway, before I came here, I walked the dog. I'll just say. So
I have no concept of
yeah,
that.
if you start a project like this with kids, just be aware that they get bored easily, and after they see it germinate and start going, then they kind of go, well, I'm done with it for now, and they leave. But it's absolutely a good project. But the two most salient points, I think, for doing from growing from seed are variety and control, because you get to control the soil it's grown in. You get to control the fertilizer, the light, the starting time. You have full control of your plant from moment of germination, from moment of plant, all the way up to harvest. And I think that's a pretty incredible thing.
I've found some kids are quite enchanted by growing and doing things, and and it's probably the reason that they still plant sunflower seeds in pots and bring them home.
Yep. I find there's that period, and I found this with most kids, starting it, they love it.
Yes.
Up until it gets to that point where it's not really doing anything. It's grown, it's put out its first fancy leaves, it's looking happy, but there's no chance of a flower or fruit. And that's kind of they die off. But then the moment it comes to planting it outside and then getting to use the hose or putting on the sprinkler, they're right back into it. There's just that little lull.
Yeah.
So don't give up. And the other thing, I have never ever met a kid. Maybe don't do it if you have small kids with a Carolina Reaper, but I've never met a kid that hasn't wanted to at least try the food that they've grown.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I grew up with a grandpa who was a passionate gardener, plus my mother. My grandpa grew primarily vegetables and flowering trees, but there was nothing more delightful than to go out with my grandpa and annoy him and distract him so that we could pick all the peas.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. And that was part of the game plan.
I did that with Harry, my kid, 8 years old maybe, and Jenny said, okay, you two go outside and pick some veggies for the salad for supper. So we go outside and we've both got our bowls, and he was a little young, so I had the pruners, and I was going to do like the kale and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I told him to go pick the peas. And I turn around and the bowl is on the ground and he's standing at the peas and he's going hop, 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 hop. And I literally caught myself. I was about to tell him off. I was about to
Yes.
be like, hey, dude, no, but, and I'm like, I'm about to tell off an 8-year-old, 9-year-old.
For eating green vegetables.
Anyway, we didn't have peas in the salad that night. Could care less.
Yeah, but he got his
And
green.
yeah, and and then I think it was the next year, or the year after, in the winter, he knew Jenny loves spinach, it's one of her favorite veggies. So he went and he took some of my seeds out of my cupboard, and he grew Jenny a couple of pots of spinach on the windowsill,
Wow.
so she could harvest fresh
born
spinach.
gardener.
Yep.
A gardener is
Yep.
coming up in the ranks.
Exactly. So there's always something, and I find if you do that with kids, a good one you can do to pair with it. I didn't bring any of those in, but start your seeds, and then start a little tray with microgreens, because they're fast and the kids can eat them right away, and
Yes,
that'll keep their interest going. But
you gotta give them a taste first.
100%,
You
100%.
know?
But I
So-
find, sorry, go on.
Well, so when do you add your lights? Do you do them right as they germinate or right as they're,
So my grow lights are on all the time.
Okay.
Every light in my living room, every light in my office at work, in my office at home, is a grow light. I don't have regular lights. So that's a bit of a loaded question. There's two things I recommend. So I know some people that'll start, kind of like what you were saying on the back of your freezer. I know some people that'll start their seeds in the furnace room,
yes.
right? And if the room is pitch black, because the seeds don't need light to germinate.
No, most seeds don't,
Yeah.
and there's some very strong provisos about certain seeds that literally germinate in the dark.
Exactly. Yeah,
So-
they want moisture and warmth.
Yeah,
That'll get them going. It's once they break the soil that they need light. But what I have seen, and it's happened to me before, few years ago now, I grew some seeds. I had a tray like this, and I had a dome on it, a humidity dome.
mhm,
Wasn't really thinking, busy doing a bunch of other things, and there was enough moisture in there, and there was a light on the dome.
yes,
And I left work Friday, came back on the Monday. Well, the seeds had germinated and the light had been on, but the light was so far above them,
oh
Yep.
dear, yep.
all just
Big
shot up.
stretch,
Yep.
yeah, big stretch,
Yeah, and then they all just fell over. So
yeah,
I started again. You always see people trying to save them and whatnot. So if you are going to put a light on them immediately from the get-go, I'm okay with that, but make sure your light is at the right setting. And
yes.
you can I'll move these heat mats here if you want to take
Yeah,
them over
I'll
there.
just take them over here.
So what I do, and there's two options you can do, and all of these lights, we have an LED one, and then we've just got the T5, which is your halogen strip.
Yes,
And all of these, and it's something else I want to touch on as well,
okay.
actually is,
You're worse than I am.
I know, but I brought no notes. I'm like, it's Kath and I, we can get through this.
Yes, we can.
But a lot of times people look and when I'm talking to them about starting seeds and they start doing the math and they go, I need a heat mat and I need a light, and I need this. These are going to be one-time investments that will last you years, because your
Yes.
heat mat, once they're germinated, and they've already been transplanted, it's getting warmer outside, put your heat mat away.
Yes,
Yeah. Your light, unless you're like me and you keep your lights on for all of your house plants, or you always got something on the go for whatever projects. But I know people who use their lights, get their plants to where they need, and after 2 months, 3 months, they turn the lights off and put everything away. And then they bring them out again next February, and then they put them away in May. And this going all day, every day, all year. This light, I don't know how much it is, $50, and it'll last you 5 years.
yes.
So I know it seems like a big investment, but it's how long it will last.
And
But
they don't use a lot of your electricity
No.
bill.
no, they especially
Yeah,
the LEDs. So ones like this will easily last you 10 years, and I'm not going to spend all of my time looking at it, but it's pennies a day to run it.
Mhm.
Pennies a day. And the benefit you get out of it is it's literally the difference between success or not
Yes.
for a lot of growers. So the one thing you want to do is either make sure your light is low, and you
Yes.
can buy stands and you can, yeah, there's things in there. Or what I do is I'll clip the light under a cabinet. And then I'll take the tray, and instead of moving the light down, I'll put the tray on bricks and I'll lower my tray. So as long as you're keeping that distance between them, and the heat mat is fine on the bricks, it's not going to get damaged. I do it numerous times. And it works a
Yeah, I
treat.
like the business of lifting the trays up to the light. That way I'm not standing over top of my new seedlings, trying to adjust the light height and having the light fixture fall.
That's happened to you, eh?
Oh,
I'm not the only one.
well, you start looking at it and you're just feeling so accomplished, but you're realizing that the lights are going around. And the
Yep.
plants going around the lights. In fact, I was growing, I think I told you I grow Thunbergia,
Yep.
and one time I forgot about them and I was watering and I realized that they'd grown up and twined themselves into the chain and they were
Oh my.
so as
Just made themselves right at
yeah,
home.
right
didn't
at
they?
home,
Yep.
and I thought to myself, well, now what?
Yep.
So luckily they hadn't gotten too far in their twining, but I still had to undo them and
Yep. Undo,
and-
and you're breaking little bits off, and you're.
yeah, and
Yep.
hoping that you're not going to get this broken thing.
And I'm so glad you said that, because that's happened to me before. So I have both setups. I do have a light that I move as well.
Yes.
And I remember, I think it might have been last year, before, very recently, and I adjusted the light as the plants were growing. And the next morning I came in, so my light is suspended. It's got the clips holding it. And I came in, well, when I'd adjusted it, obviously I'd chucked it and one part of the light was down like that. So not only had it smooshed these seeds, all of these seeds were light burnt. And
Oh,
they've
yeah.
gone completely white, and I lost maybe a third of my seedlings
Yes.
from it.
Yeah.
Where you anchor this and lock the light in
Yes.
and lower your tray down, you don't have that same
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, I use those wire shelves and I just, the little
Yep.
on stands.
Yep.
And they seem to do the job. And I'm quite pleased with it. In fact, this is one of my favorite things to use for raising things up are the fence posts.
Yep.
You can do that. My neighbor and I built new fence last year or the year before, and I went around and gathered up all the fence posts.
You cut that to fit, didn't you?
Yeah.
One thing I don't recommend, I did it a few years ago, works great, was
Yes.
bricks. I was like,
Oh.
bricks work amazing. And I set them up. And then when I was done, I was like, oh man, now I got to pull all these bricks back down. It's all fun when you're doing the project, you're bringing them up and you're setting them up, and then suddenly you've got 10 bricks that you have to take downstairs again. I'm like, that wasn't so much fun. Where, yeah, things like this, but use what I built Harry an old cedar bench, and I think he used some old books, because the trays we use, they don't have holes in them, and that's the other thing. So that leads me to the other one. When I say using books, and people immediately go, the water. I don't use, and now I don't know about you, but until I transplant my first time, depending on how healthy and robust my seedlings are, I don't use a watering can.
Ah,
I use a spray bottle.
oh, good.
Yeah, because I've used watering cans before. And what I find is I'll go as careful as I can, and sometimes it's just a bit and it's floating, or I water and it pulls the seed down.
Or
a
you
little
water
too
on the
deep.
same side of the tray all the time with the watering can and you get that erosion hole,
Absolutely. Yep. 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 Your
and-
soil is going down. Yep.
your soil's going down and you're going, what did I do? And that's when I sometimes will wander through and look at my trays and there'll be soil worn down. And I'll take them and I forget they're not sitting in a solid tray and I'll do this to get the soil to. Not a good plan. So, you have to have all these conversations about, should I, shouldn't I, will I, won't I?
Well, that's, you know what, I love that you're saying this, Kath. I really do, because I've spoken to a number of people, and there's times where, people will hear somebody like you speak with, where you've traveled. what you've done, the amount of people you've taught, all of that, and they'll talk to me and they'll see my success and gardening, and whatnot. And I find sometimes people get intimidated and they go, "Oh, well, I can't do that." And what I tell them is, I didn't start at this level. Do you know how many mistakes I made? Do you know
Yeah.
how many plants, like house plants? So I never really did house plants. I was an outdoor plant guy. And when I started at Golden Acre and moved to the offices, I was like, well, I want house plants. I want to really get into that. Oh my God, I killed so many of them. I killed because I was overwatering brutally. And at the end, I brought up one of the staff, Catherine from Houseplants, and Catherine with the laugh. Everybody remembers her laugh.
I was about to say, it's her laughter.
Yep.
And you tell when she's working because you can hear the laughter.
Yeah, you can hear her across the stall.
Yeah.
And I brought her upstairs and I'm like, help me. And she did. And she gave me some pointers and some guidelines. And now I've got a ton of houseplants, but I didn't get there on my own. I went to people who had that experience and had that knowledge, and they made the mistakes to get them to where they are. That's how we learn. You know.
You know, I always remember at school, one of our profs said something about it's sometimes trial and error. I can give you all the technical details and the temperature of the soil, and I can give you all of that, but you have to learn to be the handler.
Yep.
I mean, it's like, I always think in my mind, this is like training a puppy.
Yep.
Because you got to be on deck, you've got to be thinking a bit of, but you know what? I don't want to deter people because, oh, we have a question. Okay. Where?
Oh, what do you start from seed? Is that the one?
So the comment, you can read her comment.
I feel such a wonderful sense of accomplishment seeing the plant start from seed to the final stages and how much you can get from one single tiny seed. It gives you such hope.
Yep.
And then, oh, and Linda's saying, trying petunia coated seeds for the first time. Can we talk about pelleted seed? Ooh.
I mean, I can talk maybe this much. I am not that familiar with the pelleted seeds, to be honest.
Well, petunia seeds, as a grower, will tell you they're very fine, and they also tend to spread a little bit of dust. So they more and more we're seeing the pellets on the pelleting on the petunia only to keep them from disintegrating by getting overwatered. And the pellet seems to help them to get to the sprouting stage and get above ground. And then that gradually dissolves.
Excellent.
And it holds it stationary in the ground because petunia seeds float. They'll float this way and that way, and they will go around. And the first seeds that I ever met or in the later part of my gardening career were the other pelleted seed are beets.
Okay, yep.
And that's because beets get a disease and they put a pellet on it to keep it from getting it. Plus, I don't know if you've ever broken one of those pellets and looked at them. They are the teeniest, tiniest little seeds. And that was one of my grandpa's favorite crops. And he let my younger sister and I do the seeding because our hands were small. And we have this perfect, what he called a perfect seeder hand for seeding, because you get that. You
Yep.
can put them in there and then you just go like this and tap. And you go along your row and you keep them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so he always said, yeah, they may read your palm and say that's a good heart line, but it's way better for seed.
It's a good seed line.
It's a
Yep.
good seed line. So it's all in the question. And the same thing with your petunias in the pellets. You'll find it sometimes easier to just put them in and seed them.
Yep. So
along.
I've never the only pelleted seed I've ever dealt with is protected grass seed. When you're
Oh,
putting
yes,
that down,
yes.
but for actual seeds like that, even beets, I've never done them pelleted. The tiny little ones,
Yes,
and I'm not as careful as you guys. I do the other method where I put in as many as I want. When they germinate, I kill the ones that I don't want.
but you could be eating the greens.
Yeah, that's true, but it's
Yes.
they come up and I nip them off and get rid of them. I even do that because I'm sure you've seen that. Somebody accidentally seeds 2 tomatoes or 2
Yes,
peppers or
yeah.
whatever,
Yes.
and they're desperately trying to keep both alive. Just pick one.
Just pick one.
Yep, pick one and get rid
Yeah,
of the other
yeah.
one.
Although
But-
I carry around chopsticks. And I'd say, hey, everybody has their thing, you know, and it's a dibber. It's a tiny dibber, I
Yep.
grant you. And you just go in and you just flip one out and make the next hole, next soil thing. Make a hole with your dibbers, stick it in and just tuck it in with the dibber. Chopsticks are great. My restaurant down the road where I buy my
yeah.
Chinese, they give me an extra set of chopsticks every order.
I see, I don't have the time or the patience for that. I'm very, so my podcast co-host, Brandy, you'd be singing her song right now because Brandy is one of those, she wants to keep everything alive. And I'm one that I'll have a quick look and be like, I think that one's doing better. Snap, garbage. And I go real, I do the quick and dirty way. It's,
But I like to share.
yep.
You
And-
know, I have a neighbor next door, and when she and her husband moved in, they didn't garden at all. Then Bob helped me build my fence, and she kept walking through and looking at my raised planters and doing all of this. And the next thing I know, he's building his own new deck, and she's made him put planters up one side and down the other side. And now they just put the new deck on the side door where the barbecue is, and she made him relocate the barbecue so she could have planters on front. So when I'm taking and dividing plants, I take some over to Angie.
Yep.
You know, we share, but that's why we have a plant share.
Yep.
You
And,
know?
and I absolutely will share. I always grow more than I need, no matter what.
Yes.
And I'm pretty careful about putting in the correct amount. But if I've,
Well, there's no.
if I'm starting 72 seeds and there's 2 tomatoes in this one, I ain't dibbing it. I can tell you that for free.
I see this blue insulation works really well to prop up trays.
That would be a great one. It's nice and light.
Yeah,
No water is going to affect it whatsoever.
yes.
Yeah, I haven't used that, but I can absolutely see why that would work as well.
Okay, Patty's saying, I have very poor germination on leeks and celery. What conditions do they like?
I've never grown celery. I don't like it, but I do like leeks. And I've always found that my leeks, whenever I've done them, they just work really good in a kind of just a heavy, they do really excellent in England.
Yeah, I know.
The English, and my dad always had his leeks, so he would never really work the soil. He would always plant them next to the compost because he had his own compost pile.
Yeah,
He would plant them there. Now again, he never started them indoors because we're in England.
I was just gonna say that, you know, because leeks get planted early.
Yeah,
They used to go in the allotment that I was part of. The old boys kept telling me I needed to get my leeks in. And that would be usually the end of February, the 1st of March.
yep,
And they germinate really well like that. But they also would check the germination rate on them. You know, they'd put them on a saucer and see how they were going to germinate.
oh,
Then
really?
they'd put them in. And where I was, it was in Bedford, and it's along the Great Sand Hills, as they call it. So there's a fair amount of sand in there, but they were faithful to doing compost. And they all said the same thing. You put your compost down, you wait about a week, and then you seed your leeks. Here, the people that I've seen with leeks and growing them from seed, they usually start them about now. But you've got to make sure that you don't bury them too deeply. They're a tiny, tiny little seed.
Yep.
So you've got to be very careful about how you spread them. So my thing is to put the leek seeds and a handful of soil in.
I know leeks here. The one thing I've always heard about leeks in Canada, and this is everywhere, East Coast as well. It's not just Calgary. If you want them to be successful, you have to start them indoors because the season isn't long enough.
Yeah, and that's exactly.
Yeah.
And then the celery seed, it is one of those ones that I personally don't choose to grow from seed because I find it a little tricky. So I usually buy the bedding plants. But the trick with the celery is that you want to maintain those soft, whitish stems and keep them fairly pliable. Otherwise, you end up with woody stems. So I saved the cardboard liter milk things.
Okay, yeah,
And I use them as a sort of a cloche over top. I open the top, and when I plant each celery piece, I just do the milk things over them, and it works like a darn. Touch wood.
yeah,
It works like a darn.
yeah,
And I find that that's the most successful. I have a friend, however, who lives out just southwest of here, and she grows her celery from seed indoors, but she also then told me very important thing is to buy some really good quality worm castings or good quality compost. And then the celery will grow
yeah,
much better. And I don't know, when you look at how it's harvested and you see that flat bottom to it, that's because when a celery grows, it grows up like the flat bottom and it grows like this. And then along the bottom, it forms a circle. It doesn't grow deep roots until it's probably 6 to 10 weeks in.
yeah. And one thing I do know about leeks as well, and it can be tricky in England with the climate they've got. Because of that amount of water, again, the sand would make a lot of sense for that.
Yeah,
Is they do not want any standing water. They don't want
no,
to
they
be,
don't want to be standing in water at all.
they like their soil to go a little bit dry. They like that to dry out and then get it damp again.
Yeah.
And it's the same from starting them indoors, because I find one of the number one things that people make the mistake on starting their seeds indoors is overwatering. And
Yes.
I find that every time, and then you run into problems with damping off and other problems.
Yes.
You start getting the mildew or the mold developing on the soil.
Yeah,
And that's again another reason why I like the spray bottle, because I can
I
control it.
actually got invited after my second year in the allotments. I got invited to the shed party and they have beer. And it was all because I succeeded finally with my leeks. And
Part of the inner club, right?
yeah, and you had to understand, and I mean, I took those home and made the best soup,
Oh, that's
potato leek soup.
Yep.
But the thing was that they grew, their leeks would have these big fat stems and they were, you know how they grow like that braid.
Yep.
And they were just to die for, because the first year they gave me some to see why I would grow them again. But at that night when we were sitting around having a beer in the shed.
Nothing better. There's nothing better.
And we were discussing what they made with them, and they would talk about the potato leek soup, but they said, me duck, East Anglia, me duck, you've got to get them fat enough to give you substance in that soup.
Yep.
So those are just a few things
I love-
I know about them.
The big fat leeks too, when you cut them, they make such a good roasted vegetable
Yes,
if
they
you put
do.
them in a pan. But
That's
yeah,
right. Okay, so, okay, if I say this wrong, Alida Milne, do you grow zinnias from seeds indoors, or do you direct seed them after the last frost directly in the garden?
I've done both.
Me too.
I've done both. The only difference I find is they do very well started in the garden. Oh, we've got some there.
Oh,
They
that's
do.
awesome.
There they are.
There,
Yeah. The only difference I found is starting them indoors. When you get them out, you get blooms quicker.
yes,
That's really
Yeah,
the only difference. You get a longer season of prettier flowers.
yes,
They really get that punch. But other than that, it's, if you really love your zinnia and you want a lot of them and you find it much more cost effective to do it that way, I would do it that way. Other than that, depending on how much room you have for seeds, because they're one of the ones that will be successful to go straight outside. So
yes.
if you
And-
have limited room, maybe don't start them indoors.
Yeah, and I personally, when I buy zinnias to grow outdoors, one of the things that I always try to find on the seed package, and all the seed packages have changed so often, but it will tell you how many days till bloom time.
Yep.
And these are one of the earlier flowering ones. Yeah, it's State Fair. It's one of the early ones. 35 to 60 days till blooms.
Yep.
So not necessary to grow them all spring, like maybe start them indoors the 1st of May. And when it's time to put them out, you can put them out.
That's
But
true.
they're
Your
very
first
cold.
transplant could be straight
Yes.
to the ground. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, it says right on the, I love the new Mackenzie packaging, by the way. It's got some serious new,
Yep.
But I mean, it even says now on there, 5 to 7 days to germination. And it says seed depth, 1/4 of an inch. And it is a substantial seed because if you look at the flower, you can see where the seed head's
Yeah,
gonna.
feel free to
form.
open them if you want to show some seeds.
Well,
Come on, have some fun. I didn't bring this stuff so we could just kind of show pictures. Let's rip stuff open.
okay, I'm showing something.
That's what it's all. I already said we were going to open some begonias and show people.
So when are you coming back?
Yeah. Like, what do you want to see?
Do I have a
next?
wish list?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so,
But I find, one thing, I'll just talk on that really quickly,
Yes,
is that when
because
it
I'm-
comes to gardening, I find doesn't matter the age that I'm teaching, people are tactile. They want to see the seed. It doesn't matter if you say,
guess what? Deb found scissors.
thank you, Deb. But when I'm talking about, something, like soil, it's like paint. You tell somebody the paint's wet, they can't help but to dab the wall, right?
That's
And
right.
you tell somebody a sunflower seed, they know what a sunflower seed is. You can buy them at 7-Eleven to eat them. They still want to see you open the pack, and then they go, that looks exactly like the one at 7-Eleven that I eat. Like, yep.
Except
it's
it has no salt. on it.
Exactly. It's not roasted and salted, but still it looks the same.
Okay, so zinnia seeds, can we see it, Deb? Are you able to see it? Okay, the zinnia seed is quite large. So they're not a hard seed to grow. They're easy to handle and you can effectively plant them one at a time,
Yep.
which is one of the reasons I like them. And I usually tell beginners, grow some zinnias because they're really easy and they're showy.
Yep.
They're really showy.
That's the thing is that somebody mentioned earlier about a sense of accomplishment. Zinnia will get you there because
Yes.
you'll do it. And the other thing about zinnias as well, I'll touch on that, is that they work really, really well in your pots, in your window boxes, or direct sown into the ground. And I
Ah,
find you can have some fun. And if you're worried that you're putting them out and you're worried about the frost, then, do the ones in your pots. You could even start some indoors, have some in pots that you bring inside if it's cold. And then when you're sure there's no frost, start some in your yard, and then you've got
That's right.
staggered growth. Like, have some fun. They're a really easy one to grow. And yeah, it's not like the sunflower. You
Yes.
direct sow it outside and then you're
Yeah.
waiting all season for some oomph.
okay, so, and what about your famous dahlia? Dahlia. Tubers, seeds, celosia. Okay. Dahlias are tubers.
Yep.
And they literally look like big chubby fingers that come off of a central stem. And they'll be in about another month.
To be honest, I didn't see what we had. So they come in with the same company that we bring these in. And again, I didn't get a chance to look.
Okay.
I was off and I was just grabbing some things. So I grabbed the begonias. We had begonias and gladioli. We might even have some in now. I don't want to say yes and people go and they don't have we don't have any. If we don't have them in now, they'll be coming in within.
Yeah, usually they come in about the 1st of March.
Yeah.
And that's usually when they come in. And you don't want to start dahlias too soon because they grow quickly and then they get soft.
Yep.
So you want to get them going. My friend Elaine Rude grows them. She's passionate about them. She has quite a collection. I think last year she was trying to give them away. And she had so many, produce more. So they are really quite easy.
I had a friend, Keith, in Montreal, same thing. He loved them absolutely. And he would bring them in and he'd care for them and he'd wrap them in the sand and put them in his
Yeah.
cold room.
Yes.
And every year the same thing. And boy, do they again, they're like a zinnia. They just,
Yes.
they get that attention immediately.
Yes. I thought I'd seen this. Okay, dahlias do grow from seed, but they're not the double dahlias you're used to. They've got the sort of single daisy-like flower. And this one, oh yeah, this is the seed.
Well, they're kind of like the difference between the tuberous begonia and the wax begonia.
Yes, yes.
They're both begonias, but one gives you one is that standout flower.
Yeah, and there's the seed. It's quite large. And this one is a beauty, I think. I've looked at this before. Mackenzie's really improved
They really have. They actually, so Mackenzie, a little behind the scenes, if anybody's interested. Mackenzie, Jiffy, there was a takeover of the
Mackenzie
company.
is a Canadian,
Yeah.
was a Canadian.
Was, yeah, and they got taken over, and they are really, really coming out of the gate strong. I don't know if you remember, but every Mackenzie pack, when you turned it around, the information on the back was different. It was in a different place. It didn't always give you the same
And
information.
the writing was so
Yep.
tiny that when you were helping a customer, you practically had to carry around your magnifier with you.
Yep,
However, I like Mackenzie because I know that when it got taken over, though, they kept the flower growing fields and the seed fields,
yep.
which are in Manitoba. So in a lot of ways, we're supporting
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Canadian.
That's why I grabbed Mackenzie. Absolutely.
Yes,
We can't stop progress,
No.
and we all still want our flowers. I actually like what Mackenzie, because you see a lot of times companies get taken over and they go back a step, cost savings or whatever. These guys actually, they're
well,
coming
they've
out
done a
strong.
lot more of the, like I say, 50 to 80 days to flower for the morning glory. So get those started.
Yes,
But Celosia is kind of tricky. I'd rather buy it as a plant already started.
Yep.
Because I've tried once or twice to grow Celosia from seed and I've had minimal success.
I've never
Minimal.
tried because of that. I've had enough people like you, like I said, we learn from the people around us.
Yes.
I've had enough people that are just like, don't even, like, let the
Well,
experts do it,
I'm
so.
kind of a compulsive person, so back in the day when I was first really working in the industry, I would buy every flowering seed known to man because I really wanted to see how they grew.
Yep,
And my mom's garden was a flower place, and I'd seen several places, but when I look at the seeds now, I try to find the days to germination. I try to find how deep to plant them. I mean, and West Coast Seed does the same thing. They have the days to germination. And it's,
I often work backwards from that, because same thing, I always try and do something different, and I'll ask Jenny what she wants to see.
Yes.
And it can be anything from something specific, like she wants a zinnia. She loves her nasturtium. Or she'll be like, oh, I really want to see salmons and pinks this year. And I go, okay, great, let's start. And that's
Yeah.
how we select it. But I do always try and do things differently. But I was telling you, before we went on air, one thing, and I know other people have no problem. I can grow peas, like I said, Harry, you can eat them. I have never had success growing sweet peas, and I absolutely adore them. And I don't know
they're my
exactly.
passion.
I-
My grandpa used
Fragrance.
30 feet of peas, but he always had 10 feet of sweet peas.
Yep.
And forever, I came home once from England after a visit. And they bring the sweet pea seeds out in the fall. And they're all the different colors and all the different things. I spent 200 pounds on sweet pea seeds.
Oh my.
Of course, I got called over to the thing as I
Yeah,
going through
customs, yeah.
customs. And he said, you spent 200 pounds on seed. Are you going into the business? I said, no, I'm going to give some away. I'm going to have them for at least 4 years, maybe 5, keeping them going. And I brought all the sizes and I bought all these seeds. And the trick is I plant them on Easter Sunday.
Okay.
They like the cold soil. They do the very best in cold soil. Takes them about 2 weeks to germinate and show. And once they show, I mound them. I put another layer of soil on them because then they'll grow nice and tall and straight and the roots will form along the top.
Yeah, I'm going to try that this year because Jenny loves them. I have no problem with morning glories. Nelly, not successful with everything, but I'm pretty successful.
Yeah.
Sweet peas, I even tried them again last year. They started, they came out, I got all excited, and then they just went to nothing.
Then there's the birds that think that you've put in a salad crop just for them and they like peas.
No, it wasn't. They come out and I'm like, oh my God, got them this year, and then they just wither in.
Yeah.
But I've never mounded them and I've never started them that early.
And I always plant 3 heights.
Okay.
Royal Family, Spencer's Giant, Royal Family, and the Short Sweethearts or
Okay,
whatever.
I'm gonna try them
And
again
that
this
way you
spring.
get flowers right up the top and you put your selected colors that you like a
Yep.
lot.
And, and that's the thing, you know, what, I just want to quickly go back to that point. What we were saying about, we don't want anybody to be disheartened. Like, we're going to tell funny stories about lights falling down and stuff like that, but they're the rarities and they're the pitfalls that can happen. I've never been able to successfully grow these, and yet now I've heard yet another piece of advice, and I'm like, all right, I'm in again. I'm
Now
not
we'll
going to
have
give up.
Now I'll expect a full report.
Exactly, yeah, and I'm going to mention this. Brandy and I will be recording the podcast tomorrow, and I'm going to mention this, and I guarantee Brandy will make a note on her computer, and she'll be bugging me about my sweet pea report as well.
And the other thing I need to report back on is, did Mackenzie package any Wiltshire Ripple?
Okay,
It's my favorite. It has veins all through it and it's purple and white and it's.
there was definitely more sweet peas on this. So for the peppers, I wanted to show all the variety of one kind of type of food.
Yes,
And then I wanted to show all the different types of flowers you
Yes.
can grow from seeds. So there must have been 8 different types. I can absolutely look at that for you.
okay, well, you never know, it might just show up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? This weather we're getting in Calgary, I went down 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Couldn't get moved in the seed department. Like, I had to wait my turn to go and grab seeds before I came here, because everybody has got that itch right
Yes.
now.
Oh,
So,
yes. Okay, Tara wants to know, have you grown something successfully that typically wouldn't survive in this area?
ooh, I'm trying to think of,
I'm trying to think of something.
the only, grown from seed that has done it, because the problem is nothing really is meant to survive here. We grow it from seed and then it dies.
But that's why they're called annuals.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, well, because when I found out that New Guinea impatiens are perennials in New Guinea, I was rather ticked off.
But there is perennials in the seed packages.
Yep.
Lupin are one of the easiest.
Yeah, oh, lupins are,
Yeah, and then delphinium. I like the Pacific Giant, but from seed in your garden, it's gonna take 2 years.
yeah. And
You know,
lupins, my
yeah.
sister loves lupins. They grow everywhere in the Maritimes. We used to
Yeah.
live there.
Yes.
And she planted them here, and anyway, life got busy and she forgot to deadhead, and we had lupins after lupins after lupins, and
Yes.
yeah, they became a bit of a pest. But I mean, I love lupins. I have no problem. I've kept Japanese maple, cold storage in the garage. But the thing is, yeah, you can keep it alive, but they never thrive.
Oh,
Like,
somebody better tell mine that.
oh, you go, no way.
Yeah, I have it's about 7 feet tall now. It's quite large.
What do you do with it in the winter?
I put it in the garage, but now I can only park one car in my garage. So we should discuss what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. Okay, have I grown something successfully here that doesn't ordinarily grow here? Sir Harry Lauder's walking stick, which is a shrub, but it's very cool. It has twisted stems and it's really neat. And it's a part of the hazelnut family.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I bought it at Golden Acre before it was Golden Acre, whom you're working
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
I remember going into the tree lot we went to a meeting and then I was downstairs snooping. And I saw this and I went, oh, I haven't seen one here, ever. So tucked it under my arm and paid for it. And then I had to ride home with the supervisor at Golden Acre South. And he said, why do you do this all the time? I just got my car cleaned.
It's not my fault they had it in after you got your
Yeah.
car cleaned.
Yeah, but it's now doing really, really well. But the trick that I discovered with it is that you create microclimates as you plant your garden. It's all part of
Yep.
planning how you're going to do your garden. And it's the little bits of microclimates climates that you create. It's where you position your trees, your shrubs, and how you position your perennials.
Even your, where you're gonna put a garden shed, are you gonna create a little heat sink somewhere? And where
Yes,
you, where the
yes.
prevailing winds are, and yeah,
Yes.
that's a great point.
Yeah, and I mean, I have luckily got two very large spruces on the other side of my back fence, and it has created this lovely microclimate. So I don't get half the wind damage I used to do, because I live right in the lee of a hill, and the wind used to just come down that hill. And, you know, it could take out a,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so.
That Calgary wind is not fun
No,
for
it's
anything.
not, no. Okay, Joan is asking, which annuals would you recommend pinching and which should definitely not be pinched?
Well, I would definitely not pinch my zinnias.
No, but you
Um,
deadhead them.
Yep. Oh, yeah, deadhead, absolutely. But for zinnias, deadhead, geraniums, but when I was thinking pinching, I know some people do like the African violet and they nip them back so that
Yeah.
they keep coming
Well,
out.
I'll nip and pinch back nasturtiums for about the first month or so, just to get them nice and strong and good bushy.
I've never done that.
No,
I've never, mine always
yeah.
seem to bush out, but they bush out eventually.
Yeah, you see the little jewel mix?
Yeah.
If you pinch it a bit, it fills into a lovely shrub-like piece of,
Oh, wow. Because I always do my nasturtiums in a pot.
yes.
I like them on the stairs because
Yeah.
they cascade down the stairs. They always kind of grow a little leggy.
Yes,
And then eventually they bush out and
Yes.
you start pinching them right away and force.
yeah, and I pinch back my marigolds.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, quite regularly, as well as deadheading. I want to have marigolds that grow in a shrub type form. So there's the French, and then there's the standard marigolds, as
Yeah.
I call them. And this is crackerjack, which is part of the African marigolds. And it's one that if you prune it a couple of times, instead of having just two stems of marigolds come up, you get 6 or
Yep.
7 off of one plant. So it's just sort of one of those.
I
you know.
pinch back. It's funny that you said that about nasturtiums because I will pinch any of my trailing petunias, a million bells or things like that.
Oh, yeah.
To again thicken them up,
Yeah.
but I don't deadhead them.
Yeah.
right, once
Well,
they're
no,
done.
but Calibrachoa, they're meant to, they self-deadhead.
Yep.
They're meant to not go to seed.
And if they look and be careful, because I told somebody this trick and they weren't as careful as I am. I take my electric leaf blower and I put it on low and I just give them a gentle waft and it blows all the gross stuff off and they look nice and fresh again.
Yeah.
But I will sometimes pinch them back.
Do you ever go to work when this season is on? You're doing all these little.
So when the season starts, I always feel like I'm being really neglectful of my family. Because it's work and garden and I'll come home after a long day's work and I'm walking from the garage to the house and I look and I go, "Ooh, garden needs some water." And my back's down and I'm watering and I go, "Oh, I'm just gonna go over there and get that." Oh, I'll do a little bit of weeding. Then next thing I know, I've got my edger out.
And then it's 10 o'clock at night.
Yep.
And you haven't eaten supper. The dog hasn't been walked.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I've absolutely done that because the garden takes over. But then once you get into the summer, it's if you do that preparation first, once you get into the summer, you're good to go. But you know, I deadhead. I actually find deadheading one of the most cathartic things. I love deadheading. I love and here's another one. I love deadheading cosmos because I love popping off the dead heads.
Yeah.
But then I hate seeing the stupid broken stalk.
No,
So then I've got to go in and get my pruners.
But
and sift them
I
properly.
like cutting them so I can put them in a vase.
Yep.
You know, sometimes there's like 8 vases lurking, you know, and you put them somewhere and then you forget that you've put them there and you forget to add water to the vase a couple of days. And then suddenly you do have dried stumps. However, cosmos, when they dry, make the greatest seed collection,
That's
you
true.
know,
Yep.
so I will do
And-
that.
And if you cut the cosmos back hard, cut them back in about half, they'll bush right up. Another one that's really good to pinch back as well. And I tested this number of years ago in Montreal is verbena.
Oh, yeah.
Verbena, it was getting very leggy in my basket. I didn't know that much about it at the time. I love it. I love the deep purple and the lilac together. And I literally just chopped it in half and oh my God, does it ever come back strong? Bushes out
Yes.
and just sends out a whole new flush of
That's right.
flowers.
Okay, Anne's telling us my gladioli corms have already got long sprouts and roots, so I had to plant them into pots. Will they survive transplanting into the garden at end of May? Yes.
Yeah, I gladiola are pretty tough.
Yeah, they're really tough.
Yeah,
The trick will be is the fact that glads, here again, they form, the corm is sitting like this, and then the roots all form in a small circle at the bottom. So you have to be very careful with glads, not to plant them too deeply into the pot, but also still allow enough for the roots to go this deep.
yep,
Because when you go to transplant them outside, the other thing you have to do, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's just mostly the wind in Calgary. I always tell people to plant a bamboo stick beside each of your glads so you can tie them up so they don't blow away.
yep. No, they,
And that's the trick.
the gladiolas, I hate transplanting, peony, bleeding heart. Because you lift them and the roots are just, and you're trying to put them in and then you're like, it's looking good and it just slowly goes over
Yeah,
on
but
you.
they
Yep,
come back and they're so
Yeah.
tough.
exactly.
And if you lift them, you make sure you take all the plant, because otherwise you'll end up, I built a new front step over top of a bed of what was flowers. I had dug out that bleeding heart, not once, but twice. And then the step finally got put in. And the next year I had bleeding heart coming
I was
out
gonna say it came up around this.
through the cracks that, the divides in the
Yep.
boards. So I had bleeding heart there for, I can't tell you
Yep.
how long.
But it's when you first transplant, it doesn't look good. But gladiolas, yeah, I'm not. They are one tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are. I wouldn't be worried. And I honestly, the end of May, usually by about the 15th or 20th of May, you will find that it's getting pretty frost free and they're pretty tough.
Yeah.
So Joan, don't you find that you have earlier planting now? You're not planting, one of our regulars. You're not planting so late in the season, or just let me know and I'll pass it on. Anyway, Linda's asking me or us about begonias. So I really can take this out.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna take this one out because I'm taking this one home, Deb.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. Yeah,
Barbara,
that's right.
I haven't seen it in forever.
Again, we don't bring things and we go, oh, look at this. No, we're gonna get our hands dirty and we're gonna touch things.
Yes, and that's part of it.
Yep.
To me, that's all part of it. I remember when I used to go on the buying trips and I'd
Yep.
be in the back 40 pulling trees out.
If somebody's telling me, there's nothing when I'm doing my buying and somebody's telling me about a soil, I don't want to see your bag of soil. I want you to open it so I want to smell it. I want to
Yeah.
squish it.
Okay. How do you grow a
So,
begonia bulb?
yeah,
See these?
all side up.
No, this one's already sprouting and that's where
Oh,
the
yeah.
dip. See, there's two already. No,
Oh, look at that.
see, it's already sprouting. And the other thing is that these are European begonias because they have a full beard. They're completely bearded. So you just want to make sure that when you first plant them, you leave this open and let these grow up first. And once they've started to grow and they're really nice and full, you then put about a half an inch of soil on top, and that will start to get the stronger stems. And then, Linda, you won't get them so leggy.
Yep. Do you always taught them like that? Because I know some people, again, my friend Keith,
Yes,
amazing gardener back east. And when he would take his begonias out of his cold room,
yes,
he wouldn't plant them at first. Now, like
No.
you said, these have already been sitting in the greenhouse,
yes,
but he would literally take them, put them on a thin bed of soil, kind of on one of our seed
Yes.
trays,
yes.
and he would just leave them in the sun until the ice started turning pink.
And
then-
then,
yeah.
and the pink is a really good
Yeah,
sign.
yeah, exactly. Once you see those eyes turning pink, you know that you've got it, and exactly what you
Yeah,
said.
It's just a question of getting them prepared. And yes, I will put them in a pot right away. And I have seen people who grow them just sitting on something,
Yep.
on a bit of soil. They,
And then the moment they start going pink and you get some movement in the eyes, then you start them. But I mean, they can take a really shallow bed.
my friend Janet Melrose grows them on what she called an island. She just puts a pile of soil on her table and puts them, and then they start to.
Like, I've never,
It drives her husband.
oh, that wouldn't sit well with me. No, like, I'd be like, well, if you're doing it in that, can't you put it in a tray? Like, but yeah, that's how easy they are.
Yeah,
Once they
mind
have
you, her
that,
son hates it more.
oh, that wouldn't sit well in my brain. I like things, I don't mind doing it in that kind of style, but maybe just a little campaign.
I'll talk to her.
Yeah, just some boundaries. It's not my house. She can fill her boots.
Oh, I
I'm glad
know.
she's doing.
Anyway, these are one of my favorites. This is a pendula begonia. It hangs, it has that lovely fuchsia-like drop
Yeah.
flower. And they do, see that little guy standing beside it? They really do get that big.
Oh, yeah.
And look at how lovely and full this bulb is.
And the impact that they have in
Yeah.
any area where it's
Yes.
a little bit shady or a little bit dark.
Yes. Oh, they're so beautiful.
I love begonias.
Well, I'm a begonia fan,
Yeah.
so I really and truly have to confess to that.
One thing I find as well about begonias, speaking of them getting leggy, is I know a lot of people we get that in our head that oh, it's seed starting time. We literally talked about light right at the get-go. And they'll take begonias, like you saying, you put it on a bed of soil just on the table. They don't want a ton of light. They don't want a ton of
No,
moisture.
they
want to do
germinate
that own
better.
thing.
Yeah, they want to get it ready.
Yep.
And then as they get a bit more light and the day length gets longer, they start to turn pink.
Yep.
And when I'm buying begonias, I'm looking for them in this kind of medium in a bag.
Yep.
I have in the past, way back, I will buy them singly. We used to be able to buy them singly. I'm not sure if you.
Oh,
do
kind
that,
of like the boxes where
Yeah.
you just pick out the
Pick out-
tulip bulbs.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
but they don't do that anymore.
I haven't
seen it
that.
forever, but I think it's because they need the moisture. And that's the part.
Yep. I was
The,
just gonna say, because I think they would dry out too rapidly, especially in
Yes.
our climate.
yes. Okay, Joan's saying, when you're in the garden deadheading, do you prefer to use pruners or snips?
I'll use whatever's at hand. It depends on what I'm deadheading. The right tool for the right job. If I'm doing geraniums, they're always by hand.
Yeah,
If I'm doing cosmos, I will absolutely pop them, but then when I go out with that nice fine stem, I like my snips. If
Yeah.
I'm doing something a little more meaty, like a zinnia or something, yeah, I'll probably just use my pruners. So it's tool for the job, but sometimes I get
depends on what's
lazy.
in my pocket.
Exactly, that was my.
But I use
Yep.
my snips. I'm a big fan of, I don't ordinarily share brand names, but I love my Fisker snips. Nice pointy. I can get in and do them. I even do my geraniums and all of
Yep.
that with as much as I can. Some of them I'm not so sure about.
Yep,
Yeah.
and only thing I'm gonna say, because I do it often where I'm out, and you'll see flower geraniums. I've done it, cosmos, and you go to do it by hand, and you go to break the stem off, but it hasn't rooted properly, and you pull the plant over, or you go to pop a head off a cosmos, and you're like, oh, replant that guy nice. Those ones I'll replant, not those
Yeah,
tomatoes. though.
Not the tomatoes, no. Will one begonia create that huge plant? Yes, especially when the tuber is that big. And I don't know if you can see how big it is, but you know, when the tuber's that big, and the thing is that you've got to watch it to see how many heads come out of it, and it will grow one that
And
big.
it should say, hanging baskets. I'm just quickly looking here. I'm in the English section, sole requirement, planting time. They've got, because of course the first instructions are always Dutch.
See, this one says, the Marmorata, the other one that I like so well, says that it's going to be 12 inches tall. but it doesn't tell you how big, but most of these
Yeah,
form bigger plants. Like I've always tried to grow them. And if you start them now, they get quite large.
yeah,
But the trick is to pinch them back till they really fill in. Especially, you'll find Berlini will need pinching, like it'll start to turn pink. It'll form 3 or 4 two leaves on each stem and you pinch out the center
Yep.
two. And that way they fill up and they start to grow tall.
yeah, because some people will take that and they'll look at that and they'll go, oh, I must need 4 or 5 in a pot like that. Yeah, and then they start jamming them in and then
They crowd them and they don't grow properly.
yeah, exactly. That's why I was looking because
Yeah,
so a good rule of thumb, if you look at the nasturtiums on the back, I think we can see this. It'll say seed spacing. I don't know how well that's showing up.
yeah, I'm not sure how.
Yeah, but on the back, trust us, and all of them will say that seed depth, seed spacing, plant spacing, and it tells you how much you need to get that full look. You
Yes.
can always cheat them a little tighter if you want it nice and
Yeah.
full, if you're putting them in a pot.
See, that one, mine, the original one I had, I started it in an 8-inch pot and then over the summer it started to just go floppy. So
Yeah.
the next year I planted it in a 12-inch and it was just perfect. It
Yep.
just looked great.
And that's what so there's
this
no
one-
instructions on this
No,
about how close. So that'll be kind of like one and done.
Yeah.
Always keep an eye on that. And even if you're not sure, because you can lift these out and you can keep them in storage and you can go again next year. It's a better idea to do one, see what one gives you. So you put one in, you go, oh, I wanted it a little more fuller. Well, next year get
Yeah.
2, as opposed to jamming 3 in and being like, oh, this is too much. I'm losing them, and they suffer. So it's always better to start small and build up as opposed to go big and realize you've bitten off more than you can chew.
Alan's asking, what is the earliest blooming annual for flowers for bees in Calgary?
Oh my, right. Depends which one you start earliest. Oh boy, I'm trying to think which, anything that's in your frost hardy one. So a lot of the times pansies and petunias are always a good one to get out because
Yeah,
they can take those. You stay away from any impatiens, New Guinea impatiens.
they shouldn't go out till June though.
Yeah. You mentioned the word frost around them. They're like, I'm out. See ya.
Yeah,
So look for those really hardy ones, and for those you'll find them. The pansies and petunias, you absolutely can get them in seed.
They should
Like
get
Gus was saying.
yeah.
Yeah. So get those out, but honestly, depending on where you are, it's whatever you're going to start. If you're starting, and get them out. But in our greenhouse, the big hitters that we see come out first because they do have a little bit of hardiness are pansies, petunias, and geraniums.
And violas. the
And violas,
smaller-
yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and a lot of the bees in the cooler weather will do low flying. And then
Yep.
but pansies, petunias, and you know what? Primula. There's gonna be primulas coming into the stores pretty soon, and they flower in the cool, and the bees like the uncomplicated flatter
Yep.
flower. So that's where I would
Yep.
be gathering, some of that, and it will be whatever.
Yep.
Anyway, there's no more questions. We talked fertilizer earlier.
So there's one last
wait,
one.
oh,
I think it's Ellen as well
Oh,
about compost.
I am unable to compost, so want to bury vegetable scraps in my garden at a shallow depth. What should I do for this to be successful?
I would say don't.
Yeah, me too.
I would say don't. I'm sorry, Ellen, but composting in Calgary is really hard because of how dry it is. I would either, and I love compost. We spoke about that with the leaks and whatnot.
Yes,
You got a couple of options, either buy some compost from a garden center, or we have a green bin program, and I don't know how much is allowed, but I believe if you contact the city, you can pick some of that compost up as long as you have a driver's license where show that you're a resident of Calgary, you can go and get some compost for free. So that compost that you've paid into, you can get back. But putting scraps in, that's a surefire way to attract pests. Skunks will be very interested in what you're putting in there. A lot of times too, they won't break down, they'll just start to rot, and now you're going to introduce pathogens into your garden. I don't recommend doing that. I recommend going with compost. So sorry about that.
And I wouldn't do it at a shallow depth.
Yeah,
And honestly, that is what you're saying in there. And a lot of times you will find that if you do put compost or vegetable scraps into your garden at a shallow depth, you will invite some interesting critters.
yeah. Oh yeah, they
You know-
love that smell.
Oh yeah, and they'll come for it, and they
Yep.
will. And I mean,
And once they've come once, you're not getting rid of them.
you're never gonna get rid of them. Like my favorite thing to watch is the magpies in the compost.
Yep,
Oh my goodness, they fling it.
yep. And especially.
And they're doing the taste test.
Yeah, because it won't compost. It has a better chance to start to rot, and that smell will bring them in, and they won't care what they have to pull out of the way to get to your garden scraps.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm glad I put that, and I put it right there so I could completely forget to talk about it. So I'm glad you brought it further. Liza.
okay, well, we have a couple of more.
Oh, more questions came in.
Okay, Lynn, I'd like to grow a tall sunflower in a container on my deck. What size container should I put it in?
Okay, so I'm
And it
gonna.
isn't that I'm laughing at you, but
I'm going to share something here, and I've done it twice now. And we have the pictures on our blog post at goldenacre.ca. So a few years ago, I was talking with somebody about growing a sunflower.
yes,
And they said, oh, you need a ton of room. You got to have a huge pot. And I said, absolutely, no, you don't.
yes,
And I took a 2-gallon pot, put in soil, and stuck 1 sunflower seed in it, and got a 8-9 foot tall sunflower.
yes.
No, it was only 1, huge, and the roots were coming out of the bottom. And at the end, I was watering it 3 times a day. But I grew a sunflower in a 2. So I told that story, and I think it was Brandy, God love her, was like, well, we need proof. And I was like, well, Brandy, I didn't take pictures. So she made me, yeah, I don't know where it is, Deb. I can find it and send it to you guys. But I did it again.
Yeah.
And this time I did take pictures, and I sent them to Brandy, and Brandy was like, that's amazing. So we think because it gets so big, we've got to have this colossal pot. It's not true. I did it in a 2-gallon. I'd recommend going bigger if you've got it.
Well, I did sunflowers in a 5-gallon pot. I put 10 seeds in there,
And nice.
and they were literally 5 feet tall, and they made the best heads. And I said to myself, I really better pick those before. And I went out one morning, and I managed to get out of the 6 plants. I managed to get 3 heads because the birds had. they
Oh
just
yeah. Oh, they
snacked
love
in it,
them.
and they,
Yep.
you know,
But I find
Yeah.
actually with sunflowers as well, one thing that the 2 times I've done it, they've actually grown faster than the ones in my garden,
yeah,
because the black pot pulls
And
all
so,
the
yeah,
heat in. It
yeah.
gets those roots just popping. The fertilizer all stays nice and trapped in that pot, and they rock it up.
well,
full
look at
sun.
southern Alberta where the sunflowers grow for the
Yep.
sunflower seed. Bow Island, something, some down southeast. Anyway. Joan says, isn't there a machine for your kitchen counter that you can put your kitchen scraps into, and it makes compost very quickly? Yes, but I can't remember the name of that composter.
I've seen it advertised, but I'm I'm a little cynical until I know somebody. I'm not going to trust the advert. I need somebody to buy one, use it, tell me how amazing it works.
Well, the city of Calgary out at the Ralph Klein Park, they are very environmentally strong on all points. You're not allowed to take plastic into the building.
Oh,
You have
nice.
to eat off plates, knives, and forks, no matter
Good.
what. But they have a compost room, and there's a gal that looks after it, and she had all the different composters, and she did quite a demo for us. Bokashi, I knew if I kept
There you go.
talking,
Yep.
Joan, if I kept talking, Joan, it would come. It's a Bokashi composter. I think Lee Valley sells them. I'm trying to remember. I think that's
And,
it.
and they really do work that well, Kath?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
There was
wonderful.
quite a bit of stuff going on with it, but, how about an in-house vermicompost setup? Having worms.
That, I mean, that'll work.
I'm a worm murderer.
Yeah,
I will be confessing to that.
yeah, I think by the time you know, and again, I'm not gonna dissuade, I would love to see you try it, and if it's something that you're interested in, and it's a fun project, absolutely go for it. I can never say that enough. There's an awful lot of effort and an awful lot of work to do for something that
Yes.
is extremely affordable.
Yes,
If it was something that was very hard to get, very niche, and you were doing this, and it was a massive benefit, I'd be all for it.
yeah,
I feel that you're gonna do a lot of effort for very little reward on something that you can get for $7, $8 for a 30-liter bag of it. And I would just hate to see you go through that. But on that note, I'm all about trying new things. So absolutely, I had a friend who years ago he'd heard about it. I can't remember the proper name of it now. I'm going to try the calf trick and I'll talk about it and see if it'll come to me. But he did that whole setup where he was feeding his plants with a fish tank,
oh,
and
yeah,
he was cycling the water through.
yes.
Great. He loved it, and it took him some trial and error. But once he got the correct filtration and the correct system
And the
going,
right amount of charcoal in the filter.
yep,
To me, the charcoal is the crucial ingredient with that,
yep.
is that little fine charcoal.
And
it works great.
you've got to check your filter. You can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't, and you've got to keep it on the reasonable
Yep.
side. So you were saying about fertilizing, that you take your smaller tray and you're not going to fertilize at that stage.
No. So when we have, I've got it right here. So this is my starting. This is normally the one I use to start.
Yes,
And what I like to do as well, just to make my life easier, is I'll do peppers, tomatoes, zinnia, sunflowers, whatever I'm doing, and I do
Yes.
them each in each quadrant.
yes,
And I get asked and at the end of the day, I work in retail.
yeah,
But I despise going to certain places that sell you things for the sake of selling you things. And people will come in and they'll be buying this and they go, what fertilizer do I need? Nothing right away. Everything that seed needs to germinate and to pop up and to get
Yeah.
out of the soil is included in the seed. Everything is right there. And then when it comes up, we already talked about it, our light's going to be right there. And we're using a good soil.
well, you're going to move to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're using a nice, healthy, organic soil. This has got what it needs. And that little baby seed has everything it needs. And exactly what Kath just said. So now we're going to transplant from these into these. And the great thing is all of these are designed to fit. So these are just inserts. So that's the tray. And then Kath's will fit into that beautifully. So these
See?
inserts are wonderful.
Yes. And they fit together nicely.
And once I do my first transplant, that's when I start my fertilizer.
Okay.
That's when I
And
find
you
it
fertilize weekly, monthly?
depends on what you want to do. I always recommend, I know some people who say, and I don't agree with this, but this is what we hear, and they go, oh, it's organic. You can't go wrong. You can't. You can choke the soil. You can put in too much. So I always read the back, just like we were saying with the seed pack. Every fertilizer is going to have manufacturer's recommendations. In fact, I even go to the point where my first fertilizer, it's an organic seedling starter fertilizer. This is the same company, a lot of people know it, that make Rage Plus.
Yes.
And it's really good. And these guys say, apply with every watering at least once a week. So I go, that might be a little too much. My seeds have got everything. At this stage in the game, I'd rather err on the side of caution.
Yes.
So I'll maybe do 50% of the recommended dose. A lot of people go, oh, if a little bit of fertilizer is good, if I double it, it must be better. And I always say, well, if your doctor says, take 10 milligrams of penicillin, you don't go, well, 20 would be better, and you don't up it. So follow the
Same thing, yeah.
directions.
Yeah. And I I ordinarily, the Rage Plus name sort of brings my teeth out, you know, I get a little. But I really like the Evolve
Yep.
company. They are a company out of Winnipeg. And the founding guy is just the neatest guy.
Sheldon?
Sheldon,
Great.
isn't he just the best?
He is
And-
wonderful.
And he started this whole operation in his barn.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and I just think this,
And he's got a team. He knows his stuff. He knows it.
oh,
And
yeah.
the reason I always say Rage is because a lot of people think that company's name is Rage, because that's the
No,
one.
and
they
that's,
know.
no, the name of the company is Dirt and Grow.
Yep.
And I think that his wife had something to do with it.
Yeah. Dirt and Grow and Evolve, and I love their products.
Yes,
I have a ton of them, and the great thing about Sheldon is that he's very free with the job I do in giving me samples, but he always gives me samples to give to other people too.
yeah, but he used to be a sales rep.
Yeah.
One of the biggest companies out there.
Yeah, and he knows his stuff. He's passionate
He's an
about it.
agrologist.
Yeah.
Proper.
And this though, even this 1-1-2, I'll still only do 50% of this at the beginning
Yeah.
because I've seen
You've
it
put
before.
fresh soil in,
Yep.
you've already got nutrients going on,
Exactly.
and you've created by watering for the first growing part of it, you've created bacterias and you've created,
And they've got light close to them.
Yeah.
They're photosynthesizing. They have
yeah,
everything, and they're in a controlled environment.
that's
I
right.
don't have to worry that they're gonna get, a ton of washout. There's gonna be a ton of rain. Or the other thing is when we're outside and you have your plant and it's sitting in the garden, and you water it and the water goes and it pulls up on the soil and then it runs off.
Yes,
And you're fertilizing, you go, "Oh, how much fertilizer did it get?" It doesn't matter if you're doing an insert this big or the ones Kath had here, a 4-inch pot. When you water, all of that fertilizer is trapped there.
that's
The
right.
plant gets to use all of it, and then when you water again, any of that water, fertilizer that might have dried up gets renourished, and the plant, it's not escaping.
A dry
So-
plant won't take fertilizer. out.
Exactly.
So you do a bit of moistening ahead of time so that the root system is stimulated. You and I have taste buds, so we are stimulated to swallow. If a plant is wet enough, it will swallow the fertilizer. So it's,
That's a great point, because I
Yeah.
see people, especially with water solubles, it doesn't so much matter
yes,
the shake and feed, but the water solubles and their plants are dry and they mix it in the watering can and they just pour it straight on. It's like, wet that soil first.
no, wet the soil. That was one of my grandpa's things.
Yep.
He always said, I gotta get water on there and then we'll do the fertilizer
Yep.
thing, except he used to make me walk on the wet soil. So Alita would like to show the soil, yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a few different ones. So this is just a pro mix, seed starting mix. Honestly, if push comes to shove, if you can't find this, or you have a potting soil, absolutely go ahead and use that. We've done it before. You'll just probably need to keep an eye on the watering if you're using a potting soil instead of the seed starting. The only ones absolutely do not recommend for seed starting is any of the heavy garden soils.
No, I was just about to
Yeah.
say, and don't go out in the garden and dig soil and think you can add stuff to
Nope.
it. You'll end up spending $50 more than what you would for just a bag of potting soil. So it is
Yeah.
well worth it from
And
there.
all this is, so this, and we always say soil, I still say it, and it says seed starting mix, because it's technically not a soil.
No,
It's a peat moss base, and this one, just so you know, has in it first, and just like our groceries, the first ingredient is the highest ratio, and then it diminishes as it goes down. And this has Canadian sphagnum peat moss, peat humus, cocoa fiber, perlite, lime, organic fertilizer, and mycorrhiza. And it works really, really well. So I like using this, but a company out of Medicine Hat, Altwin, they do a seed starting one. That's an amazing soil.
they started in the worm game, didn't they? Worm business, worm compost.
Oh, Altwin, they've been.
They've been around forever.
So the first thing my introduction to Altwin was the big bags of decorative rock.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't even soil.
Yes,
I got to soil through another route, but anything seed starting, I even know, and like Kath said, you can do it, but I know people who buy their own peat moss and perlite and vermiculite and worm castings, and they're doing their own ratios. Really fun. You can have a great
If you're a
time doing it.
mad scientist.
Exactly. But you're spending a lot of money and a lot of effort, and it doesn't take much to get the ratios wrong at that stage.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you've got whole different kind of problems. These guys have done the math, rely on it, and like $8, $9 for this bag. So again,
And it goes a long way.
Yep.
It really does. Well, thanks, Colin.
you are welcome.
The
Thank
evening
you.
has gone so fast.
I know, right? I was like,
Oh, we're nearly there.
yep.
Now, I just have to do a little propaganda. We've, March is coming, and March is, it comes in like a lion or a lamb. It just depends, and I'm hoping for a lion, because then it'll go out like a
Exactly.
lamb.
Yep.
So, but we've got some great courses coming up. One of them I have a special thing about because it's mine. I'm doing a 4-part grow your own food course, and it starts on the 4th of March. Another one, we do these design your yard classes. We have another one registering right now, starting March 5th. And we've got a kickstart your garden. And of course, there's still tea coming up. So come have tea with me. It's in person, it's here in the office, and I really, really enjoy my guests. So I'm hoping I gotta talk to the guest, I forget. And then we'll do another Over the Garden fence on the 19th of March. But look at our program on, check what's happening up on the website, and you will see all sorts of neat things. Anyway, thank you, Colin.
You're
It was
welcome.
really fun.
I'm just gonna say one thing that I think we talked about that right at the beginning, and your idea about planting the garden and growing food and everything else. That's all integral to where we're starting now.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so many people look at this part and they go, I'm gonna start this many seeds. Look at the end first.
Yes.
How much room do you have for tomatoes? How much room do you have for your zinnias, for your nasturtiums, for your peppers? And work backwards.
And how many tomatoes do you need to eat?
Exactly. Or to give to your neighbors and make
Yeah,
friends. But
and can.
I find it would be, to sit with somebody like you and talk about my garden and then work backwards to learn what seeds I want and then start progressing.
Yes.
That's the best way to do it, is a bit of planning. So those courses tie perfectly into what we've
Well,
talked about right
we
here.
aim for that.
Yep,
Our Michelle is very good at organizing us.
fantastic.
So, anyway, thanks everybody for turning out. It was real good questions. I hope that we can see you all again. Oh, don't forget we get a discount when we shop as a member. So
Absolutely.
take your membership card
Yep.
because you get a discount. And it was fun.
Okay.
Anyway,
Bye, everyone.
bye.